Hey, welcome back. Good to see you again. Hope you're all well. Thanks for joining the channel. Today on the bench I got a Dual 1249 turntable. Now this was sent to me by a client. He wants it completely gone over. He gave me a list of work to do on it, and he supplied me with some parts, and we're going to get into this and fix it up. I believe it's all functioning. There's no faults with it, but he does want new belts put on, and he wants a few other mods made. For one thing, here, let's have a look at this. Okay, so he supplied me with the platter. The platter's separate in this bag. I'm just going to unwrap this. And looks like he supplied me with some chocolate as a bribe here too. So put that down carefully. And I'll put this aside. That's always good. Alright, so he wants new RCA cable. He wants me to either use the ends off this or you just use the whole cable. And I was looking at the ends of the original one. You can't see it, but it doesn't look the greatest. But we'll look on putting this cable on the turntable and having that as our phono. He supplied me with a couple of belts. And I think these are the correct ones for the turntable. Yeah, there's two belts here. So we'll put those in as well. Here's the original belt. It's not too bad. It probably would respond to a boil in water, but since we got new ones, we'll put new ones on. Another mod he wanted me to do was he wanted me to install the Dual 840 motor mod. Now I'll get into this a little later in depth, but this motor mod, apparently the motors in these Duals, they have a fault where they could start up. When they start up, they could start at double speed, and the platter rotates at 66 RPM instead of 33. And it's a random thing that happens. It's an anomaly to the motor design, I think. But somebody has designed a mod for this to fix that. So we'll get into that and we'll show you that. And let's just have a look at the platter here. Platter looks good. It's not the heaviest platter I've ever seen, but it's got some good mass to it. And it does have the strobe etched in the sides. So he also supplied me with, aside from the chocolate, owner's manual, which is nice for setting it up. This here is, what is this? Oh, it's a mounting template. Oh wow. Well, we won't be needing a mounting template. We're not mounting this anywhere, so it's nice to have this kind of stuff. And then he installed the printed out instructions for the mod kit. And I'll show you where we can get this mod kit from. And it's a fairly simple rewire. And it's all nicely laid out. So we'll do that. So apparently this turntable is going to be given to his brother, I believe. So it's going to be given as a gift. So that's why he brought it to me. He wanted everything worked over and 100% before he did that. Let's take this top off. Let's have a look at this top. It's not bad actually. It would respond to a nice polish, I think. It's a little dirty, some dirt and stuff here. You got to clean that up. I'll clean it up and see how it looks, and if I have time, maybe I'll get the buffer out and we'll buff it, and we'll get this looking good. This is here to lock the platter. Yeah, so everything's intact. Now he said don't worry about the cartridge. The cartridge is going to be coming off and he's going to be putting a new one on, but this thing has an Empire cartridge. Let's have a look at it. Empire 4000. It's gold plated. There's the swing down guard. I never looked at the stylus on this. Well, it's pretty dirty. The stylus looks intact and okay. So we'll put this aside. We don't need this right now. Won't be needing it until we do testing. So like he said, he's going to be replacing the cartridge anyway, so I won't bother doing all the full tone arm setups. I'll let him do that. We're going to focus on the mechanicals, relubricate everything, cleaning, and do the install of that mod, the motor mod, and then we'll do the replacement of the RCA jacks. These are Audio Quest, gold plated, and it has a net covering. It's kind of nice, but it's awfully thick, so I don't know if this is going to work with this. Well, let's have a look at the old ones. Let's have a look at these old ones. One thing I noticed, there's no ground cable, so I don't know what the story is with that. But these are the originals. They don't look bad. But we'll put the other ones on. Cable itself, we'll see if we can use the new cable, and if we can't, we'll stick with the old cable, and we'll just put the ends on. That's what he wanted. He wanted me to just put the ends on, but I figured, well, it would look a little better, I think, if we put the whole cable in instead of me splicing the ends on, because these are quite a bit thicker than the original cables. Look at how much thicker. It's about 10 times thicker. So we'll figure that out when we come to that road. But for right now, let's just get it out of the box and get it flipped over, and we can start working on the mechanicals, the re-greasing. And this motor feels stiff. Well, maybe not. This is a tooth belt. The pitch control is slipping. And it comes with a belt that's not toothed, so I don't know how that's going to work. It is definitely a toothed pulley. Okay. It only does one complete turn because there's a stop here. Okay, we'll see what we can do about that. This, it says it's for the Dual 1249 pitch control, but it's not toothed, and this one is, so I don't know. Will it work? That's going to be the question. Okay. Alright, so right now it's locked in the transport mode. These screws are backed out, which locks the base to the housing here. So we can just unscrew these clockwise and drop them down. Now it's floating on its spring suspension, right? Okay, so what we need to do is angle these. These got a toggle bolt, and on the bottom there's like a little washer or something. And what you want to do is you want to angle the bolt this way to let go of the catch. So let's do that here. And that one's out. And do the same with the front one. Okay, and then we have the last one. We can just I think we got it. And we can flip it up. The tone arm is locked down. We can flip this up. And we have to do something about the wires. So pull these wires through. And I believe you're able to flip it right upside down and use the base as a stand. This thing's pretty dirty though. Look at, there's cobwebs in here, spider webs. But overall it looks really good. So let me pause the camera here and I'll get this thing mounted somehow. Okay, I got the cables pulled through. There's lots of room to pull the cables through. First thing I'm going to do is take this outside and blow the dust out of it because it's pretty dusty. There's a motor sticker that fell off. And yeah, I'll clean this up and then we'll come back. Okay, let's just remove the counterweight. I do believe it comes off because it protrudes out the back here. Okay. All right. Put that aside. And let's see if we can let's see here. Let's try it this way. Let's try it this way. Okay. So we should be able okay that way. I don't think anything, the tone arm is not touched by anything. I think it's sitting on okay. I think we're good. Now we can do our work and shouldn't be a problem. It looks fairly well lubricated already. It's just a matter of we're going to have to go through. Oh yeah, some of this stuff is sticky here. This is, and I think this is. So let's go through and do some service here. Something fell out of there. What was that? It fell. And it fell through. So let me see if I can find what it was. Little piece of plastic. I think that's what's it called? The stern pimple? Stern pimple? I think that's what it's called. Little pieces, it's all disintegrated plastic. Okay. Okay, we are good. Okay, let's put this off long enough. Let's get into it. Let's do this. So basically what I'm going to do is I am going to disassemble all this, or disassemble as little as possible to relubricate, clean off this old grease. It's kind of sticky now. Some of it's not bad, but some spots it's kind of sticky, and it's I think is impeding the operation here. Vinyl Engine has a very good, well, they have the original service manual on their website, and it's a very comprehensive, detailed service manual. So if you have to get into one of these, you're going to need to get the manual as well, because it's got all your exploded diagrams, it's got all your adjustment procedures, and this, for example, I was looking at this. This is lubrication points. They got 5 different lubricants listed here: Molykote, silicone oil, another synthetic oil, a general purpose lithium grease, Shell Vania, BP Super Viscostatic, that's an engine oil, and Renotac number 342 is a mineral oil. So they have all these different lubricants specified for the mechanics. And I don't think we're going to get that too deep into it. We're going to make sure we get a good oil for the motor, and we're going to use a synthetic grease for pretty much everything else. And except for the spindle, we'll probably use an oil for that as well. Parts listings, exploded diagrams. You're going to need all this for when you get it, tie into it. And it's, like I said, it's very comprehensive. Yeah. So, first thing I want to do is I want to remove this big sectored, this big cam gear, and pull it off, lubricate the bearing, lubricate the tracks. But first, I think I need to remove the flywheel from the platter flywheel. So let me flip this back over here. Flip this over. And let's pull out this flywheel. And there's a little ring here that's held on. So let's do this. Pull off this ring, make sure it doesn't fly across the room. Just use a screwdriver and pry it up. And there it is. Okay, save that and we'll pull this off. And we'll put this aside. So when I removed this counterweight, I unscrewed it and pulled it off the shaft, which is incorrect. What you do is when you unscrew it and pull it off, there's a spring that'll pop off, and then you'll have difficulty getting it back together again. The reason they want, there's a little channel machined into this shaft, and that keeps the weight. Like, you can turn the knob, but it keeps the weights straight up and down. Correct way to do it is loosen this little thumb screw here, and then out it comes. So if you put this back in, you can adjust it. You can adjust the rough counterweight, and then you can fine tune it with this, right? So yeah, don't make the mistake I did by unscrewing it all the way, and then it pops that spring, and then you have to get a screwdriver to flatten the spring down and then screw it back on carefully. Okay, so now I got the flywheel off the spindle, we can be able to remove this bearing assembly out, and because we're going to need to get this wheel off. Now, this little lever here, I don't know what this is called, but you just press down on it and slide it in, and it hooks, and then you can just remove it. And you can see this grease is, yeah, it's sticky. So I'll clean up all these surfaces, and then we'll put this aside. What's next? What I want to do is remove this wheel and grease it. So let's pull off this E-clip. And we'll lift this one off. Okay, there's one. Here's two. Disconnect this spring. That aside. I don't see what's preventing that from sliding all the way in. Oh, right here. Okay, let's just lower the gear. Okay, there we go. Now we can remove this piece as well. Hopefully. Okay, see, it's all sticky. So this mechanism here has contacts coming out, and it rides on this cam, and this shorts the signal wires on the cartridge when the stylus is not on the album, and then when the needle drops, this should open up. These contacts should open up. There's one for each channel, and it should unground the signal wire and allow the signal to flow through to the amplifier. So that's what that does. It's like a muting switch. So let's pull this off. I just want to remove the 2 screws, or 1 screw, and just have it float back. Here's another screw back here. I can see, I can go around the other camera. This one has ground lugs on it, so I'm just gonna, just so we can move it back out of the way. Alright, so I got a 7mm hex, and we'll just remove these 2 hex head screws and remove this bottom bearing assembly. And this should all come out as a piece, except it doesn't because I'm locked in here. To remove the main cam gear, first we got to remove this nut, and it's 7mm. Let's just loosen this off. Okay, now that I got the 2 screws out and the nut from the other side, this whole thing should come out in as a assembly, and we can re-lubricate this. So let's do that now. Okay, so let's work on this piece. Take this off, and let's clean this up. Just get off the majority of it with a rag. Now this is your spindle bearing surface. There's 2 surfaces here. Don't scratch this up, don't get it dirty. We're gonna work on that in a bit. Let's work on this piece right now though. Let's get this up and clean. There's also grease here on this cam. And grease on this. That's for the contacts, the mute switch. Okay, I think we're doing okay. There's a little spring in here that toggles this. If you take off this E-clip and take this apart, there's a good chance you'll probably lose this little spring. So be aware of it. I don't know if you can see it. It does a little. It does the toggling of this lever. Let's work on this piece first. Pull this E-clip. You see all the old grease. Okay, let's clean this. Alright, so I'm going to be using, for grease, I'm going to be using a synthetic grease. This is a clear, white synthetic grease that has no fillers. And we're going to use this for all of the parts except for the bearings. So, let's dab here. And a little bit, where was it again? Just the two spots, I believe. And we have, oh, actually I got to clean this. There's 3 little nipples on here that are like bearing surfaces, or pivot points, or whatever, slide points I guess you call them. You clean those off, and then we'll lubricate all 3 of these. Way too much. Let me put this back together. Okay, put our E-clip back. Got grease on it too. Everything's dirty with this old grease. Come on. There we go. Okay. That's good. All right. Let's clean out this track. Oh, wrong side. Actually, what I'll do is I'll just flood this. Lots of Q-tips. We're almost there. Okay, I think that's... Let's give it one more shot. This stuff here is tetrachloroethylene. Tetrachloroethylene. And it's a very good solvent for anything that's oil-based. grease. It's actually dry cleaning fluid, and they use it in for dry cleaning clothes. So it removes stains from clothes too. If you really need to use it that bad, you could use some of that for that. It doesn't have a very pleasant smell though. Let's do this. Just clean it up really good. Okay, what do I need to clean on here? This. It's pretty black. It's sticky here. This is all sticky. Doesn't want to wipe off. That'll break it down. Yeah, some petrified grease here. It's a good thing we're doing this, I think. Alright, I think we're done. I think we're done cleaning. So this is the same stuff that's in the tub, so I'm just going to put some of this on the shaft. And let's get some in the cam groove. Use a fair amount of it because we're going to spread it around. Okay, I think we're good. Just make sure all the walls are coated. The main thing is the walls need to be coated as well as the floor of the groove, because the cam follower is going to want to follow the profile of this cam, this trough. We need to clean that. It's hiding behind this door. Okay. Probably got too much on there now, but we're going to spread it around. And once we run the turntable a few times, cycle it through the mechanicals, we're going to wipe off the excess so that it's not so, you don't have big gobs of it dripping. Okay, so that's good. We got that bearing. Let's do this here. What side is down? I can't remember. That's the top. Okay, this side. Okay. Put this aside. Let's focus on this thing. cam follower. This one is a bearing in it. Okay. Now I guess we should clean this as well. Okay, let me take that apart. Oh wow, wasn't expecting that. Okay, I think I got all the pieces here. Let me check the exploded diagrams just to make sure. This is all sticky as well. Alright, so according to this I got all parts 172, 173. Those are together. What do they call them? Got them separate. 74, the spring, the collar, and the E-clip. Okay, so we should be good. Let's clean this up. Oh, this is all sticky. There we go. Nice and clean now. Okay, let's do this. Okay, spring, it's clean. All right. Perfect. Okay. And follow it up with a dry one to, well, that won't fit. Okay. Alright, I'm going to need to push on the spring in order to get my E-clip back in. So I need to rest this on something. Okay, I just put a hex bit in my vise, and we're going to use that to push this up. Okay, I need my E-clip. Where is it? Here it is. Now what I want to do is compress the spring. Very, very careful here. There we go. Now we need some grease on this because it's might spin. There we go. Everything's good. Okay, that's complete. Now let's do the bottom bearing for the platter. And it's all sticky and gross, so let's clean this up. You can see the old grease in it. Some of it's getting hard and crusty. Yeah, it's a little bit gritty too, so I'm going to take this all apart and clean it. So let's get some, let's start here first. Nasty stuff. Still dirty. Okay, I think that's clean. Let's clean up the outside here. There we go. That's good. I also got oil on this. Okay. That's good. Let's work on this now. Now it looks like a cup held by 3 tangs, and there's a washer on top. Then we have our bearing cage with the ball bearings in it, and it rides on a flat washer that's in there in the cup as the bearing. So let's take this all apart. Okay, let's do this. I should really be wearing gloves with this old grease. Let's just lift up one of these tangs a little bit. This should be good. I think this will just lift right out. Here's our top race. Here's our cage with the bearings, ball bearings. So the grease is all dried up. Pretty, well, it's not entirely dried up, but it's getting old and dirty. Here's the bottom race. And then here's the housing. So it's got like a rubber thing in it too. Pull that out. Okay. I'll clean these all up with my solvent, except for the rubber. Take that out. Okay. Pretty dirty. Okay. Ooh, I'm running out. Time to run to the store. Let's see here. Get this nice and clean. I think that's good. Okay. Our bearing races. Is there a difference? This one's got a smaller diameter, so I think that one's the bottom. Let's put this one on top. Or, hang on, let's check this. No, that does not fit over that shoulder, so that's the top race. This one here is the bottom. Rubber ring, I'm just going to take and wipe it off. I don't want to get any chemicals on it. Okay, put that back in. All right. Put a good amount of grease in this. Okay. Well, that's a lot better. It's not as bumpy. Okay. All right. So yeah, look how dirty that bearing was, all this black stuff up here. Okay, so I think we're ready to reassemble. Okay. Okay. Alright, next I got to clean these three pieces up and re-grease them. I have one piece here has a cam follower, that's a roller on it. You disassemble this with the E-clip, clean it out, grease it, and I'm going to clean up the rest of these. I'm not going to show this on camera because it's pretty straightforward, and I think you have the idea what I'm going to do here. So, okay, moving on. Now we got all that sectored gear all cleaned and ready to go back in. We got to go clean a lot of these other little posts and slides and pivots. So we got slide here, we have a slide here with this, we have pivot, This is a pivot. We'll clean all this up. I just want to get all the mechanical lubrication done before I focus on pulling out the motor next after that. And then we'll be pretty much done with the lubrication. We can start putting things back together. I still want to clean the contacts on this switch. And yeah, I'm going to clean up a lot of this lubrication. Some of it's really not that bad. Like this here is free. But I think I might just take it apart anyways and replace the lubrication with fresh, just so that it won't go stiff in 15 years from now. And then same with little levers like that. And this one, for example, needs to be lubricated. So I'll go through and do a lot of that little stuff. I don't have to put it all on camera, because I think we have a good idea of what we're doing here. Just disassemble, clean, and then re-lubricate, put it back together again. I just want to take some of these covers off. And see what we're up against here. So this will be the neon board. And let's take this off. Let's have a look at this. I want to have a good look at these capacitors in here because, oh, that is unique. That is a unique bulb. Look at that. It's a neon tube, and it's sitting between two metal holders. And that'll provide a lot of light. It's got big electrodes in there, so it's when it lights up, it should light up pretty good. Here's the window for it. Oh, you can't see that. And here's the window for it. It's a little translucent piece of plastic. Okay. Put this back. I'm going to check that cap just to make sure it's not a failure point. Okay, I want to take this cover off as well. This is a terminal block for the motor. Should just pull right up. Okay. Little wiring diagram in there for different voltages. I did notice this has two separate windings, one for each pole winding. I guess that's what they're doing. If you want to run it in 240, you run these two coils in series, and if you're running it in 120 volts, you put them in parallel. I think that's what they're doing here with this. Pretty sure. Okay, switch. Let's have a look at the switch. And we have some caps that need to be replaced. These caps, are these Rifa caps? I don't see a brand on them, but they look a lot like the Rifa caps, although they're not cracked like the Rifa caps. Rifa caps dry and crack, and they have like a cracked look to their epoxy, and then the moisture gets in and then it just explodes after a certain time. I actually had one of my friends bring over a TRS 80 Model 4 computer power supply, and he brought it over and he says, this cap is blown up. I looked at it. Yeah, it was a Rifa cap. So I'll give him a new one for that. But switch. We can check the contacts. They're fully open. Actually, let's not play around with electrical too much right now. Let me get the greasing and cleaning and re-greasing done. See here. And then we'll focus on other stuff. Alright, so I have all the pivots and slides and shafts, whatever. I got everything lubricated, taken apart, cleaned, lubricated. There is a lot of different pivots and slides. So yes, make sure the stuff I'm using actually destroyed, well, it didn't destroy, but it started to eat away at the plastic of this slide here. I caught it in time and wiped it off, but it was starting to get absorbed into the plastic. So this stuff is not safe for all plastics, just so you know that. But it didn't do any damage. That was good. So I didn't use it on any other black plastic pieces, just for that reason. Now I'm ready to reassemble the main cam gear and put that all back because everything's underneath. It's been lubricated. And I am going to, actually first what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean the underside of the deck here because I got greasy fingerprints everywhere and it doesn't look very good. So I'm going to give this all a good clean, get rid of all these smudges and fingerprints, and then we'll put it all back together. Alright, I think we're ready for this. I just want to give this bearing surface one last clean before I get some dust on it. Lint. And that's going to be replaced with some oil when we put the flywheel back on. So we just turn this over, and this threaded post goes in that hole. Feed it under. And move it into position if I can. Should drop in right about now. There we go. There, it's in now. There. So we have two, it looks like M4 bolts with a 7mm head. Put those back in. Let's leave them loose for now. Put this side in. Leave that one loose as well. And then our nut, got a 7mm M4 nut, goes on the other side. On that shaft that protrudes. Maybe I can flip it right over, you can see it. It's right here. Okay, snug this one down. Don't go crazy on the torque, they're just little nuts and bolts. Okay, we are back together. So, the bearing is hanging down, it's causing drag here. So what I have to do now is lubricate and put back these three arms. These have all been cleaned, these three. So let's try that. It's possible. Let me check. So this hole here on this one goes on this post. That's great. This one here, okay, this goes on the other one. Okay, well, I think I'm getting it now. That goes there. We can tighten this down. Okay, so this one goes on next. Okay, let's lubricate this. Before we get too carried away, let's put some lube down. We're going to lube this slide. Way too much. There. Let's put a little on this too, because it is sliding here. Perfect. Okay. Okay, now we need lube on the shaft. Putting way too much on. I'm going to wipe the excess off. Actually, what I should do is put it in here. Okay. Perfect. Lube this up. Goes like that. Okay, I figured it out. It goes like this. I knew they were together. I remember them being together, and that one kind of shadows that one. But we have to figure out this rod, and I think the rod is like this. Let me see if I can get this in. I'm going to have to remove that nut again. But that goes in there like this. So let's do that now. Just need a 4mm socket. Loosen this off. And if I can get that up in the air, put that on there, and let's tighten this down. Okay. I put the E-clip on already, so let's remove that E-clip again. Lift it up. Okay, now we're cooking. All right, perfect. Let's lube this little pivot. Okay, I think we're complete. We have everything assembled. Tighten these down. Okay, everything looks like it is in position. Okay. Let's lubricate this. Everything else is good. That's in place. One last thing I need to install is this. So let's grease this up. Okay, let's grease up the two pivots. I don't think they're necessary to grease these two, but we'll grease them anyway. Let's see how this goes together. I think I got this backwards, okay. This has to follow into there we go. All right. This is still loose. I haven't cleaned that yet. Okay, let's turn our attention to the motor. Okay, now we got our motor. It's held in by 3 nuts. And we have to remove that belt first. So let's reach in here and grab this belt. Hopefully it'll cooperate. Okay, keep that in the middle. This is the mechanism for changing speed. It toggles between 45 and 33. I still have to remove all this and lubricate it, re-lubricate it, and I'll do that after. But let's just remove the motor now, 7 mil. Okay. Support it. I'm going to support it by hand. What is this? You have to remove that as well? Let's remove it. What does that do? Not sure. It's coming off. Little screw and washer. So I'll put that aside. Take off this nut. And we should be free. Okay. Here's a quick look at the motor speed adjust mechanism. This is the motor shaft. And we have 2 different speeds. The larger one is for 45. The smaller one's for 33 1/3. That's where the belt rides. You can see it's slotted. It's got 6 slots, I believe, 6 or 8. And on top of it, there's a little cone and a ball bearing. And what happens when you adjust the speed, you turn this knob. This is driven by a belt, that little belt I just took off back here. Goes like this. And when you turn the adjustment for the speed, what you're doing is you're turning this black thing, this black sleeve here. It's on a screw, and you're raising and lowering this whole assembly. And then see, if you want to speed up your turntable, you tighten it down and it pushes down on that cone and it spreads out the motor shaft. See how it spreads out? And it creates a larger diameter, which in turn creates a greater belt speed. And there's a little bearing in here. It's a little ball bearing. I have to take that apart and lubricate it. The rest of this should be all dry, except for that little tip of that bearing sitting on the underside of this plate. That should have a little lubrication on it just to keep it noisy or noise-free and friction-free. Now, to remove all this, there's a 6mm hex on this plastic cap here, and that would be your taking it apart point. We really don't need to disassemble this at all. Kind of a unique way of doing it. I'll have to clean the surface of this too. It looks like it's a little dirty. So we'll clean that free of grease and oil and that black stuff, and then we'll lubricate the tip. But first, I'm just going to leave the motor hanging here. The chassis is sitting upright, leaned up against my bench. So let's remove this screw. Brass screws. I wonder why they chose brass. Brass is non-magnetic. Okay. I want to separate this cover with this mechanism. I want to separate from the motor. I think this little screw here is still holding it. Oops. Now we should have freedom. There we go. So I'll put this aside and then I'll lubricate it before I reassemble. This is what we want to focus on right now, is the motor. The back, I think, oh, we lost a couple of these already. Remember that they go there. Okay. Now, it's a synchronous motor, so it's going to want to lock to the line frequency and spin at the speed that the line frequency is at. For 60 hertz, I think it's 1800, and for 50 hertz, I think it's 1500. I'm not sure. I can't do the calculations. So you have, in different parts of the world, the motor would be spinning at different speeds. So what they did is they create two different spindles. This one's for 60 hertz. It's a little narrower and slimmer because it's going to be spinning faster. In areas where they use 50 hertz, they use one that's a little bit thicker around these two areas, and it provides the same belt speed as the 60 hertz ones do. So they're just boosting the speed of the belt by adding a little thicker pulley, or what do they call this thing on the end here? Let's look at it. It's called 116. So let's look at 116. Motor pulley, 50 hertz and 60. See, they list two different parts here. One for 50 hertz, one for 60 hertz. So if this turntable was transplanted to a different part of the world, you'd have to replace this pulley to get it to work properly. It's removable. 2 set screws. It's brass. Comes off very easy. And then you can remove the rotor and our bearings. Very high quality bearings and motor construction here. If you need to service the bearings, you can always rotate this little disc to unlock it, and it pops out, spring loaded, and you can get in there and service the bearings. We're not going to do that today. We don't need to do that, so that's locked in. The startup torque on these little motors is very, very weak, and they're not very useful for anything less than a quarter, or sorry, I should say they're not very useful for anything more than a quarter horsepower, because their design is not meant for high power applications. It has very low starting torque, so we have to have low friction bearings and very little load on the motor when we put power to it, so it's able to start up. If we have too much load on it, it will not start. It'll just sit there and hum. Another advantage to these motors is if you stall them, you will not burn out the coils. The load on the coils, or the load of the motor, will go up slightly, but it won't burn out these coils. That's another advantage of these shaded pull motors. But the biggest advantage of these motors is once they get up and spinning, they lock to the line frequency and they will spin in synchronous with the line frequency. That's why they're accurate. That's why they use them in clocks. That's why they use them in turntables. That's why they use them in applications where you need speed critical stability. Problem with some of these Dual 840 motors, and apparently this only happens on the 60 hertz motors, which I don't understand why, because they use the same body, the same motor body for 50 and 60 hertz. But on 60 hertz there's a problem where it can inadvertently start up and spin at twice the speed it's supposed to be spinning. Instead of spinning at 1800 RPM, I think it spins at 36. And that's a problem when you got a turntable. Now, this doesn't happen in all these motors. It happens on a select few. I'm not sure what happens to cause that. I don't know if it's this magnet that goes weak over time and causes an upset in the startup procedure. But I've only heard about it happening on these 840 motors. So, let's say, for example, you have a dual turntable and it has this SM-80 840 motor in it, and it occasionally starts up at the wrong speed, or starts up every time at the wrong speed for all we know. What do? Can you replace the motor? Well, not really. You can't. I don't know if you can still source new motors from Dual. There is a solution. This is a module, and this is called the, let's see here, this is called the MSF-60 Modification Kit, and it's sold by a chap by the name of Duncan McAllister. He makes these. He designed this. He created the software. Actually, there's a little microcontroller in here that I'm not sure what it does, but I think it does some timing stuff for the motor. And he designed this, built it. He supplies these as little kits. And if you have problems with your Dual, you can buy these off him. And this is a low-cost solution in comparison to replacing the motor itself. Now, what he makes these boards, he makes them in batches of about 10. I talked to him about this on email, and I asked him if I could give contact information about this kit out to you. If one of you people have problems with this, you can get a hold of Duncan and make arrangements to buy one of these off him. He makes these himself. And this is all a grassroots thing that he's designed and built and tested. And a lot of people have tried to duplicate this, but there's no chance, because this is a little microcontroller inside, and he's written the software, the source code for, and it supplies a solid state relay that switches the motor on correct timing. So I'm going to be installing this kit on this turntable, not because the turntable exhibits problems at startup, only because it's a preventative maintenance thing that the owner wanted done before he handed this turntable off to its new owner. So I'm going to install this, and we'll do that together. But first, let's finish the motor. We still need to lubricate the bearings. The bearings are in excellent condition on this. Okay, motor reassembly here. We got, clean off the old bearing surfaces. Make sure they're clean and dry. These I'm going to leave alone. I'm not going to spray anything on them. And like I said, if you need to service this bearing, you can remove this retainer, take everything out, clean it. So I'm just going to use 3-in-1 on this. I'm just going to use the absolute minimum amount of oil, because any excess oil is just going to foul up the bearings with dust. Let's do this on the back as well. Sad. That's too much. That's better. Okay, so we're going to put this back together. The magnet gets orientated on these poles that are sticking up, so that's the way that goes in. And we have our back bearing. Front bearings lubricated, so we put these caps on. These are just spacers. Okay, let's get this grommet lined up. Okay, and we have to keep these spacers in place. They keep falling out. You know what, before I get too carried away here, let's do this first. Let's put the pulley back on, because I have a feeling once I put it back in there I won't be able to tighten it down. So let's put this pulley back on. And it was spaced to have about 2 millimeters of room in there like that. So I'm going to put this on about 2 millimeters. Snug down this set screw. Tighten them down. Perfect. Okay. This is our bearing, a thrush bearing on the end. I can see there's a little bit of grease on the end here. Just want to clean it off. Okay, I think that is good. Now you'll notice this has right here a small cut and the metal's pushed out, and that, I think that's just like a key so that when you put it in the pulley it can't spin. So, and then here's the bearing end. It's got a small ball bearing in the end. That's our friction point. That's what we'll put a little dab of grease on that, just to keep that happy as we... Where is my grease? So what I'll do is I'll just put a little touch of... That's all you need right there. That'll keep it spinning happy. So let's get this installed. There we go. What's going on here? Okay. Let's get this back in the housing. Okay. Looks good. Going to put these on loose just to make sure everything's aligned and in the proper place before I torque them down. Okay, so I think we're good. Wires are tucked in. Okay. Here's another screw. Tighten this one down. Okay, let's check. Got a nice bearings are nice. You'll know right away if your bearings aren't aligned properly that they'll be drag when they spin, but these bearings are self-centering. Let's just torque those down. Check our final. Everything looks good. Okay. Probably what I'll do is I'll power this up and then I'll clean the surfaces with a Q-tip and some alcohol. So before I reinstall the motor, I want to do some cleaning lubrication of these points here. So this little mechanism here is the speed control and pitch control. You see I got it. It's a good thing I took it apart and cleaned it and relubricated it, because it was all stuck with old grease. And it was just right on the point of seizing up too. And this was really difficult to turn. But it's flowing smooth now. Everything's good. So I'm glad that's done. Now let's move on to the motor. I think we can just drop the motor in place here, and then I'll get some nuts going on the other side. So I got the nut here. I'm just going to put this it's not going down. I'm going to flip it over and then we'll continue on. Okay, let's tighten these down. Okay, and we still have a screw and a washer here. I don't know what purpose this thing serves, but we're putting it back. Not sure what that does. Okay, now I need to remove this assembly and clean it and re-grease it, because it needs work as well. And then we're done with all of the relubrication. Okay, we're at the point now where we can put the flywheel back on. Before we do that, we're going to clean this surface where the belt rides so that it is nice and clean. So I'm just going to use alcohol and a paper towel. Just get a little bit on there and just going to give it a wipe. And this should take off anything that's foreign. All my grease fingerprints and whatnot. Let's see, it came back a little dirty. Now I'm going to clean the center bearing. Takes out a lot of old lubricant, which is good. And that's been cleaned, so we're ready to assemble. Now I'm going to use engine oil. In the manual they specify, what did they specify? Let's look that up. For the spindle bearing, they specify Renotac number 342 adhesive oil, and as far as I can tell, it's a mineral oil with a high tack. Like, it's very tacky, so it stays where you put it. But engine oil will do the same thing. You just get the right amount. You don't want to flood it too much. I'm just going to clean this off. But we're going to put a drop inside here. it will flow. It's still cold. There's one drop. Okay, let's place this on. Flow it around. And watch it. And let's place this on. Perfect. And that's how it should spin, with very little friction. Okay, then we have a locking ring. There's my locking ring. It's a little. That's the locking ring there. I'm just going to put it on opposite of the way the notch is. You don't need any special tools for this, just click it on there. Now that can't come off. Okay, we had our old belt that was toothed. See, it is toothed. I don't know if you can see it because it's black. But our new belt, and it should be the same size, and it is. Okay, let's install this one. I'm just curious if it'll work without the teeth on the belt. I have a feeling it will, because this adjustment knob here was pretty much gummed up, and it was pretty stiff. So it was kind of fighting the. Okay, here, let's put this here. This into position. There we go. Okay. I'll flip it over. There you go. Flip it over, you can see it's. Okay. It is slipping, and it doesn't have enough. No, it's going to work. We're going to leave it. We're going to leave it at that, and it is working. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put the old belt back in the bag, and this is going to be deposited in the bottom of the base here, so that any future tech opens it up, he's going to find the old belts in there, just in case they need them for whatever reason. Now let's test this belt. I want to do some stuff. I want to do a few things with this belt, the main belt. We have the original belt here. I want to try it out. Okay, let's do this first. Okay. The thing I'm going to do is measure the center of the motor pulley to the center of the flywheel, and we have 11 centimeters. Okay. So what I have is a scale. It's just a weight scale that you can hang things from. Get them on eBay for $5 or AliExpress, and it measures in grams, in tenths of or 10 grams increments. So I just want to see how much tension this belt has, the original belt. I'm curious to see the difference between new belt and old belt. Okay. Let's have our scale. Okay, let's turn it on. Okay, here we go. right there. So we get about 120, 130 grams. This stupid scale keeps... Okay. About 115, 120, 145. So we're in that range, 120 to 130 grams of pull on that belt to get it to stretch onto the motor. So let's try the new belt. And just out of curiosity, let's see what size this belt is. So it's put it over the large. So we're about 22 inches, as shown here. You don't want to pull it too tight because you stretch it. 22 inches. Let's try the new one. In case you're wondering, this belt, this original belt, let's see here, is measuring at 4.5, 4.7 millimeters, and thickness is 0.5 millimeter. Okay, let's try our new belt. And it's measuring out around 21. So there's a little bit of stretch in that new, old belt. This new belt will be a lot tighter. Well, between 21 and 21 and a quarter. I'd say it's somewhere there. Right about there, 21. So yeah, it's a little shorter, but then the old belt might be stretched. Now I get asked, every time I pull this out, I get asked, where do you get it from? Well, PRB line is now part of, I can't remember what the name is. But if you look for PRB line and measure a belt 2, okay, if you Google that, it comes back with, I think it's Reynolds, no, it's not Reynolds, what's the name of them? Russell Industries, yes, Russell Industries. And Russell Industries bought out the PRB line quite a while ago. And I don't know, probably maybe 10, 20 years ago now. And they've taken over the production of belts. And Russell Industries will sell PRB belts, but you'd have to find out a distributor. I don't think they'll sell you directly. And this was one of the things that they created for service techs to use, and it's really handy. It's got lots of stuff on it, and you can measure belt widths. It's got a comb here on the end for measuring widths, and you can see that one measures out about 0.203, probably 0.2, a little too tight for 0.187. 0.203 is a little sloppy, so it's a good thing to have if you can ever find one. Maybe somebody should make a replica of this thing one day. Anyways, let's put the new belt on and test its fit. Okay. Alright, are we ready? I need my... Well, this one's quite a bit more. We're up at around 300 grams, 380. That's quite a bit. 380 is quite a bit. quite a bit of pull on the belt. I'd be more comfortable using the old belt than this new one, but I am going to put the new one in, and I'm going to return the old belt to the owner. And if this causes problems in the future, he's got the old belt to fall back on. Okay, let's put it on. So just giving the old belt to clean with alcohol, and if you look, it's clean. So there was really nothing wrong with this belt. I'm going to put it in boiling water to see what changes on it. We're going to measure it again. Okay, so I just boiled this for about 4 or 5 minutes in the microwave. Let's just dry it off. And then we'll measure the length, and then we'll measure the tension to see what's changed. I have a feeling it probably shrunk a little bit. It's a very clean belt. It's a nice shape. Okay. First, the length. Let's measure this. So we're at probably 21.75, maybe a little less, 0.6 maybe. So it did shrink a little bit in length. Let's put it on and see how the tension is on it. Can you see that? So it's up around 180, 190. Let's try it again. Now it says it's 100. What's going on here? 0. 165. Let's try it a few more times here. Yeah, 165. So it did increase from about 120 to 130 up to about 165. So yeah, it works when you boil a belt, I guess. Put a little bit of life back into it. But we're not going with this belt. We're going to go put a new belt on, and then like I said, the old belt will get returned to the client, and they can keep it as a spare or throw it away, whatever they want. Another problem I'm experiencing is the belt does not want to change from one speed to the other. And I think that is because the belt has too much tension on it. So let's try this going to 45. Okay, that went okay. Back to 33. See, it's struggling to return back to 33. And I'm pretty sure that is belt tension that is too tight. Let's try it again. 45. This is supposed to flip up. The spring is supposed to pull this up. And then it's just maybe not enough spring tension. Okay, it works good going to 45, but returning from 45, it doesn't want to play nice. I wonder if I don't think it's... The spring should pull it. If I pull on the spring... No, it doesn't do anything. It's really struggling to... It tries to slip up there, but it just doesn't have enough. See, there it goes. If you help it, it works. I don't know how I'm going to overcome this. Let me put the old belt on, we'll try it. Okay, here's the original belt. Let's try it. 45. 33. Yeah, it works no problem. The other belt has too much tension on it. That's why it's not working. The new belt. Now, do I put the new belt on and assume it's going to stretch out over time? Or do I just leave the old belt on and tell the owner what's going on with this? Well, he's going to watch the video. He's going to see this. I'll give him back both belts and then he can decide what to do. It works flawlessly with the old belt. And like I said, I tested the tension of this old belt. It's got lots of tension, enough tension that this won't slip. Well, it does slip, but for starting up and stopping, it doesn't slip. Now for the modification kit, the MSF-60 Modification Kit, Duncan provides an excellent write-up with pictures, color photos, diagrams, all kinds of stuff to help you through this. It's pretty simple. In a nutshell, all you're doing is you're removing one wire and then you're attaching 3 wires. And then you mount this. It has double-sided sticky tape. You mount this here somewhere where it's out of the way. But the instruction manual here, the kit itself, has an excellent job of explaining all the risks. You're going to need to know how to solder. So you're going to need to be able to solder those 3 wires to the 2 different blocks. And like I said, the instructions give you full detailed step by step how to do this. I can go through it right now with you. For example, this is the connection block. I got my turntable. I'm going to turn the turntable over. This is upside down. Okay, that's better. Now you have 2 different connection blocks. This is the connection. It's called connection block, and this is the KS-4 block. This is actually your power switch. Make sure everything's unplugged. You don't want to be touching this when it's plugged in. It's your power switch. This is your connection block. This is your line cord coming in from the wall outlet, and then it goes to the motor connections in the switch. So what we're going to do with the mod kit is we're going to remove this blue wire, and from what I hear, it might be green in your situation on your turntable, and then you're going to add the 3 wires from the Bumblebee kit. This here is the strobe lamp. I haven't attached that yet, so we'll get to that after. You don't even have to worry about that. You don't have to take it apart or anything. So the first step is to remove this blue wire, and on mine it just keeps falling out. It falls out all the time, but it is connected between post 4 of the connection block and post 2 of the KS4 block. So that's how it's sat. Kind of a goofy setup that Dual has here with these brass. They have these brass things with a hole in them, and they sit on these posts. I don't understand why they wanted to do that, but they did it. So that's the way it sat. So what you do is you remove this wire, throw it away, and then you would take, for step 1, remove the blue wire. Now he also gives you if you're having troubles getting the wire out, you can take a paper clip and bend it like this, and you can use it as a tool to pull these up. These are pretty fragile. If you flex them a couple times, they'll snap on you, and then you'll end up with a broken wire connection. But these other ones seem pretty well anchored. That blue wire just fell out. So the second step is you take the black wire from the module, and I'm going to feed it in under here, and we take it to post 2, and we wrap it around where the capacitor is connected. Can you see this? Just going to wrap it around this post. Okay, I think my iron's warmed up now. Clean it. Just go in and solder this connection. Got it wrapped around the post just below the capacitor connection. Get some heat on this and then it will start to flow. Here we go. Okay, that's soldered. Now for step 3, you're going to take the green wire and you're going to put it on post 4. And if you remember from your diagram, if you count from the left to right, 4 is this post here. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And right down here there's a tab, electrical connection tab, that you can solder to. And you just feed the wire through the hole. Okay, and then we can fold the wire back up on itself to wrap it. And then we can solder this one too. Solder this one. Make sure you get enough heat that it flows. Okay. Okay, now for step 4, take the white wire and we are going to route it over to the connection block, which is this one, and connect it on pin 1, post 1. Post 1 is this side here, the AC input side. So let's put this onto, there is a little tab here with a hole in it. You feed the wire through the hole and then wrap it to make a mechanical connection. Okay. And then we can solder this one too. You have to do this left-handed. Okay, that's a good connection. And we're pretty much done. That's all there is to it. Now, in the instructions he says you can take this and mount it first, but I think you should mount it last. That way, you peel that off and get it in a position where there's the least amount of stress on the wires pulling. Because if you mount it in a spot first, I suppose right here is going to be good. And push it down. It's like a special gel double-sided tape, and it should stick there. You probably have a hard time pulling it off. So that's on there good. And then we can just put our covers back on. Now, you're going to want to test this before you close everything up, obviously. A few other things I should note. So, proper operation of the MSF-60 kit is predictated on the motor having sufficient mechanical drag. Thus, it's important to use the platter drive belt in new or good condition. Old, worn out stretch rubber belts will be too loose and may prevent the MSF from correcting the motor speed each and every time. The speed takeoff fault only occurs on the SM840 motors operating on 120/220 AC at 60 Hertz, mainly in the American continent. The MSF-60 kit will have no effect on 50 Hertz motors. Okay, so keep that in mind. The MSF-60 is specifically designed to remediate the speed takeoff fault and will not fix any other motor issues caused by bad bearings, bent shafts, or poor maintenance, lack of oiling, etc. So there you have it in a nutshell. It's pretty simple to install. It's a very easy install, and if your turntables has the startup issue, this is the fix for it. And it takes literally probably 10 minutes to put it in there once you have all your soldering iron warmed up and stuff. So it's very simple. Okay, so I got everything back together. I put the platter on, doing some testing, and we have big problems. There's something wrong with this gimbal assembly, that the bearing is, see how stiff it is? Something's dragging on the spindle, on the gimbal, and this is unacceptable because the record just skips. The tone arm won't move at all. And I'm trying to figure out what's causing all this drag, and I can't figure it out. And when I set the tone arm up vertical, the drag disappears. It's gone. But when I lay it horizontal, there's something's going on right about this angle. It starts dragging. You can see the drag. It won't even. The tone arm should flop over because there's no counterweight, and it's really. So I'm gonna have to, and then when I tip it up, it goes zero friction. It actually feels pretty good that way because it's not dragging on anything. Now, a couple things I've done. Where is it? I removed this shield because this has a guide or a stop, and it rides on this aluminum plate, and I thought it was dragging, so I removed this plate, this shield, and that didn't help. So another thing I did is I disassembled everything, took this aluminum plate off, and I thought, yeah, here's something I can do here. Another thing is it should be doing that, but it's not. It's sticking. So I had this aluminum plate off, and looking at it when you remove it, it looked bent, like it was wasn't flat. It had a definite warp to it. So I tried straightening it a little bit, but it's quite stiff. I think I'm going to have to remove the tone arm because I got to figure out what's causing this drag, and I think it's something going on in here in this base assembly. Because when I put it horizontal and the weight goes on it, it's sticky. Like right now it's sticky. If I shift it up, then it releases. Okay, so I took it apart, and the gimbal assembly is just fine. That's exactly what I thought. Everything is low friction. Actually, the bearings are actually pretty loose. There's a lot of play in them, so I'm going to readjust all these bearings. There's two adjustments. This one on top for the side to side, and there is a adjustment here for the other axis. And I can't see anything in this thing on this assembly that would cause any drag. This part here came apart. A lot of sticky old grease in there. I'm going to clean all this old grease out and put it back together. A lot of sticky grease. Maybe this thing's dragging. It's got some scuff marks on the end of it. And that would ride on that bottom of that plate. I'm gonna have to check that out. Okay, here's the problem I'm facing. The tone arm seems very stiff. Now you see I got it set for 0 weight and it's floating, okay? So there should be no forces on this tone arm affecting it either horizontally or vertically. And the true test that Dual says is set this all up 0 grams, and then when you turn up your anti-skating to 0.5 gram, it should push the tone arm off to one side or the other. But I can turn it right up to 3 grams and it has no effect on the tone arm because it's stiff and it has a hell of a time rotating inward. Lift. I wonder if this has anything to do with it. Adjusts the lift height, and that is not going to affect. So I can turn this up. Let me see, let's put some weight on this cartridge. 0.5 gram. Okay, it drops. Now I got it in lift mode, and if I go crank up the lift, it should be lifting the tone arm up off the record, and it isn't. Oh boy. And I know why too, because this plunger here is getting pushed up from the bottom and it's supposed to lift the tone arm like that. But it's not. Now is that stern pimple that's missing on the bottom? I believe it is. So I'm not going to worry about that right now. We don't have any lift. We'll deal with that after we fix the bearing issue or the tone arm. See, it's very... Let's turn this weight back down to 0. You can see if I bump it, it should just go off, but it doesn't. It just kind of very sluggish. I'm going to determine why. Okay, you can see when I have it in multi. Well, actually, let's try single first. Try single. It's stiff. See how it doesn't want to move? When I put it into multi, it freewheels. So something underneath here is binding when it puts it into single. I haven't figured it out yet. I think it is that aluminum plate that was bent. There is a little piece that controls its position, and I think it's rubbing. When I put it into single, it rubs. I might have to try adjusting that. But you can see the difference between the two, right? This is unacceptable because the tone arm won't track with the record with this kind of drag on the bearing. But this is a lot better. Alright, so here's a look at the tone arm from below as it moves. And that is in single right now. Here's that little, it's like a little keeper that hooks on this aluminum plate. And that's where I think it's rubbing, right there. But that aluminum plate is to keep that plate at the proper height when you switch between multi. Here, I'll switch it to multi and single. See, it keeps the plate steady, and the whole tone arm assembly goes up and down. That's why you see this popping in and out. It's single, multi. Now, there is an adjustment here. You can see with this little screw. So I'm going to play around with this adjustment. If I can get it to work in single, I'm happy with that. I don't think this turntable will ever be used in multi because it's missing the multi spindle. unless the owner has this spindle at home. I don't see this working in multi. And I can't see anything else that is dragging. This push rod here, this goes down to the cam gear, and that's all been lubricated, and there's a ball bearing on the other end, and that's all low friction. This is the anti-skating control right here, and this lever with the spring, and you see the spring is pulling directly over the center line of the bearing. And when you rotate the adjustment for anti-skating, you see how this goes, oops, see how it goes off center? So the spring pulls off center, and it allows rotational torque. That's maximum, and that would be minimum right there, because we're pulling off center, and now we're pulling on center. It's very fine control. It's a very loose spring. It's not taut at all. It's very, very low tension. So I'm going to play around with this adjustment here and see if I can get this to work. It's the only thing I can see that is dragging in this situation. Okay, well that seemed to do the trick. So I have it on single now. You can see it's very low friction. Move it to multi. Same thing. It's not dragging anymore. So that adjustment here is very critical for allowing the tone arm to swing freely. So I'm going to put this all together. We're going to finish up with the adjustments I have to adjust a few things. We still don't have cueing yet, so I think that's the sternum pimple. I might have to devise something for that because it is missing. And I don't think it's providing enough lift when I cue it up. So I'll have to devise something for that. So let's get on with it. Okay, just to confirm, I got this set for 0 grams. It's floating. I have this set to 0 and this to 0, and I give it ½ gram of anti-skate. You can see immediately it moves over. That's the way it's supposed to operate. It should be those bearings should be right at ½ gram. It moves over. Of course, if I turn this up to 3, it goes right over. But that's all perfect now. Okay, for the stern pimple, I'm not even pronouncing that properly. I'm pretty sure I'm not. Stern pimple? Stewart pimple? I'm going to use a tip that I watched on Turntable Guy. If you ever get a chance, go check out his channel. It's called Turntable Guy, and he services turntables and other things too. And excellent channel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take, this is 14 gauge copper. Don't know what else to say about it. It's stranded. I'm going to use some of the insulated jacket. So we don't need that part. We need this part. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this on a Torx T8 screwdriver. Just going to fit it on the end here. And this is just so I can hold it. And I want to close off this end. I'm pretty sure that would help. So let's just close off this end with a little bit of heat. Don't want to get carried away with the heat. Just a little bit of, I don't want to burn it, I just want to melt it. I did order some Stewart pimples, I don't know what they're called. I did order some on eBay, but they're not going to be here for a while. And they look like just little black plastic nubs that are molded. Okay, let me see. Cut off some of this burnt stuff. Maybe it's not the best wire to be using. Okay, I think that's going to be okay. Now, the one I'm looking at on the turntable here is only maybe 3 millimeters long, and so it'd probably be about like that. So I think I'm going to cut off a piece probably about that long, and that's going to be my, doesn't want to cut now. Okay, and if I need more, I can make some more. If it doesn't work out, I'll pull this one off and I'll apply another one. Okay, I think that's going to do it. So we're going to install it right here on this post, this one here. Now it's going to act on this main lever, they call it. I think they call it the main lever. This is the one that follows the profile of this cam, and it'll it's got a two-way axis here. It can rotate this way and it can rotate this way. So let's remove it, because I think if we remove this, we can get at it a lot easier. Let me pull this off. There we go. And you can see this area here where it's got dimples. That's the surface it's going to ride upon. This surface is going to actually move the tone arm. So let's put that on there. Let's see if we can get it on. Might have to stretch it a bit. Nope, went on pretty good. All right. Pretty good. Let's put this back. I wonder, does it go like this? I don't think so. Maybe it does. I think it does, because I had problems with this aluminum plate hitting the spring. So I think I had that backwards. But I think it's good now. Okay, so that's stern timple's in place. Stern pimple is in place. And it should actually move the tone arm now. Let's try it out. Alright, I think we're ready to do our first test. Let's plug it in. Now I set this for 1 gram. Actually, first I zeroed it out with the album in place, so that the needle was just hovering on the surface of the album, and then that was my 0 point. And then I locked it in, and I dialed up the tracking force at 1 gram, and anti-skating's at 1 gram as well. And I actually turned up this adjustment here. If you can see it in the black, it's all black. Let me show you. This little adjustment here is your cueing height. And what I did is I just adjusted it so that it comes up and down, because before it wasn't working. We still have an adjustment here that's called lift. We haven't adjusted that one yet, and there's probably a few other adjustments we need to do. So let's try this. Let's hit start. And it failed to lead in. Okay, no big deal. Let's try it manually. Okay, let's try a lead out. Okay. Okay. Auto return works perfect. Our start is not working. Let's try it again. It is not engaging. So we might have to do a little adjustment to that Turntable to get it to work. Okay, I don't know if you're going to be able to see this, but I'm going to activate the start, and you're going to watch it go through its paces here. So here we go. You can see it's slipping on that stern pimple, so that's not enough grip on that piece of plastic that I put in there. You see how the mechanism works. Try it again. The main lever comes up, swings around to move the tone arm, but it's not engaging. And then it resets. Okay, I think I'm gonna, let me try just a little. What I'm gonna do is maybe just get a screwdriver in here and just pry it down a little bit. If I can get at it without. There we go. I can push this down a bit. There, moved a little bit. Let's try it one more time. Oh, it's still not. I have to think of something different here. This ain't working. Okay, I think I got this figured out now. This spring here, this has to do with resetting the. See, this lever here toggles between a start sequence and a stop sequence. When it's out like this, it's a start sequence, and when it's in, it's a stop sequence. It depends, depending on as the cam gear rotates, it steers the position of this follower, right? So it either goes this way or it goes this way. Now this thing was bent down and it was triggering this to go back into a stop sequence. But I lifted it up a little bit, and I think this little post is supposed to slip underneath it unless this is pressing this down, which will put it into a stop sequence. And this has to do with the multi-disc repeat function and all that. So I think I have this sorted now. I think that should pass underneath without touching, and that will allow it to go into a start sequence. Let me flip it over and try it out. Okay, platter's on. I got this set to 1, and my queuing lever's down. Actually, I never did set this up yet for weight. You know what, we're just going to test it. So hit start. And there it is, it's working. Okay, let's try the stop sequence. And got a little adjustment there. This thing's really creaky. Not quite triggering. It worked before. Let's try this stop sequence this way. Alright, let's try one more time. There she goes. Okay, so I'm happy with that. I'm happy with the start position, the end position. The end position might be adjusted a little bit better. I think I might look into adjusting it so it's a little sooner. But the start is working. Now, of course, I don't have the multi-stack spindle, so I can't test any of the repeat functions. I can test repeat, flipping that to repeat, infinity. Let's try it and see if it restarts the album. Now it's not going to trigger. Yeah, I need to adjust that. Perfect. So the repeat function works. Good. Okay, two more things to do. Oil this creaky queuing lever and adjust the lead out. Okay, so the adjustment for the tone arm pickup at the end of the album is right here. There's a little adjustment. It looks like a screw, but it's not. It's in its eccentric cam. So if I turn this, you can see if I turn it how it changes its position. So turning it clockwise causes it to go earlier. Counterclockwise will cause it to go later. I should actually lock the tone arm in here and stop it from bouncing around. Okay, try that again. So it's right here. Clockwise for earlier, counterclockwise for later. And I believe it was probably, I'm just going to give it a little nudge here, and that should help it out. So to adjust the lid, there's two hinges here, and they're spring loaded, and they have adjustments on them. There's a little thumb screw here. You can see it. You can adjust it with your thumb. They should have pretty much both the same position. One a little more than the, or not. They should both have about the same position on the threads, and then you just test it by inserting the dust cover and seeing how it opens and closes. And I think I got it pretty good there now. It stays up on its own and doesn't slam down too hard. You can adjust this to any liking you want. I'm going to give it a little more on this one to match this one on this side. There we go. I think that's better. I'll leave it at that. Well, there it is. It's done. I'm happy it's finished. It's quite a struggle. It took me a long time too. I was fighting with different things, and when you take a turntable like this entirely apart to clean and relubricate it, it takes a lot of time, and that's the reason why I don't much care for turntables. They take up so much time, and but this one's ready to go. One thing I didn't show on the video is I'm going to replace the RCA connectors on the end of the phono plug, and I still have to do that yet. But everything is dialed in and working, so I'm going to leave it alone for now. And probably what I'll do is I'll post a separate video demonstrating this working. I'm going to let this play through a few times. I'm going to put it on repeat just to make sure it's working. And I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Take care.